would like to take the opportunity to welcome all of you. Thank you so much that you have taken the trouble to come here, to accept our invitation, to attend our annual program of the Institute for Spiritual Culture. Maybe for those of you who are attending our program for the first time, let me give you some little background information. Because exactly 4 years ago, we were establishing this Institute for Spiritual Culture here in Mayapur. We had an inauguration ceremony. And the inspiration to do this, I received through my many years of preaching service in Bangladesh, actually, because for the last 18 years, I have spent quite a considerable time in Bangladesh, between 2 and 4 months per year. And for those of you who don't know, Bangladesh is actually East Bengal. It is only 1.5 hours drive from here to the Bangladeshi border. But even though it is so close, it is actually almost like a different planet there. Our Vaishnav culture is so much alive there, up to this very day. East Bengal, this is the place where most of Mahaprabhu's associates come from, like Mukunda Datta, Vasudev Datta, Rupa and Sanatan Goswami, Pundarik Vedinidhi, even Advaita Acharya, Srivas Thakur, so many of them. Madhavendra Puri, here I'm getting the names from the back. Narottam Das Thakur, Khechari. This is all in East Bengal, which is today Bangladesh. And because it is a Muslim country, this actually has preserved our Vaishnav culture. It sounds maybe a little paradox, but it is indeed like this. Because as we all know, Muslims are not so fond of all the Kali Yuga modern ideas. So Bangladesh, therefore, has been kept very traditional, very cultured. The Vaishnava culture is still so alive there. When I travel there, it's almost like entering Chaitanya Charitamrita. The Bhajan, Kirtan, Prasadam, Vaishnava hospitality culture, it's all still going on, full on. So, and there is no Western devotees living there actually, because it is a little austere. It's like India 50 years ago or something. When I went there first time 18 years ago, no temple had a bathroom. I had to take bath either in the pukur, in the pond, or on the pump through the Punjabi suit. And the whole village came and sat there and watched how this German woman is taking bath. This is how it was like 18 years ago. So now things, have changed a little bit, so there is more facility now there. But in any case, why I'm sharing this is because over these 18 years of spending so much time there, I actually received a complete transformation. My whole worldview was put upside down, actually. And I received insights into Vaishnav culture, which is Krishna's culture. It is like Krishna's system in order to give us stability and harmony in this world, so we can wholeheartedly develop our relationship with him. So, and since of course not everybody can spend so much time in Bangladesh, I simply felt the need to put some systematic courses together and teach them in order to help devotees understand how this, our Vaishnava philosophy, is actually meant to be practiced, how we are meant to live according to that. So I've made this humble effort. I put 5 main courses together. One is giving and accepting shelter, then the Vanaprastha ashram, then men and women in spiritual culture, marriage in spiritual culture, children in spiritual culture, so many courses like those. And every year we are conducting this annual program for the Institute for Spiritual Culture, simply to bring awareness to this importance of accepting Krishna's culture. And actually, for those of you who attended the ILS, you might have noticed that this term culture was coming up so many times. Even I heard Bhakti Sri Swami Maharaj in his final lecture speaking about spiritual culture, and I was thinking, oh, okay, because often we hear Vaishnava culture or Vedic culture, but not so many devotees actually speak about spiritual culture. So I think many of us, we are realizing that now we are at this crucial point in ISKCON where we have to understand more deeply how to actually live the philosophy. Because this is actually how culture comes about. Culture develops by practically applying a certain worldview, a certain ideology, a certain philosophy. And by living accordingly, culture develops in all different practical aspects of life. And I mean, yes, I dare say just the fact that it is not so easy for us to always embrace aspects of spiritual culture, it maybe shows that we are not quite there yet in actually living accordingly to it. We kind of like the materialistic tastes and flavors and likes and dislikes. We attach to them. And it requires actually a deeper transformation to really let go of those material tastes and deeply accept the spiritual likes and dislikes. Like in Bhagavad Gita 269, Krishna says, what is day to the materialist is night to the introspective sage. So these two cultures are really like day and night, because they're based on a very opposite worldview. Materialistic culture is all about sense gratification being the all in all, the goal in life, whereas in spiritual culture we are minimizing sense gratification. So they're directly opposite. And we can imagine on one end of the spectrum is the day of the materialist, and on the other end the day of the spiritualist. So in between there's a broad mixture of all kinds of shades and grades and variations there. And actually the process of Krishna consciousness is meant to bring about this transformation, that the day of the materialist becomes our very night. This is actually what the process of Krishna consciousness is meant to bring about. So, and if this is not really happening, we can say our spiritual practice is somewhat a little external. We can even say we are committing the 10th offense to chanting the holy name, because we are hanging on to the material likes and dislikes and tastes, right? And then we cannot actually really get the full benefit of chanting the holy name, actually. So this point of culture gives just so much support in our spiritual practice, so we can transform. And ultimately, the goal of Krishna's culture is that we develop this quality of Trinada Pisunichana, actually. If we would have that quality already, we would spontaneously do everything according to Krishna's culture. But because we don't have that yet, that's why we need this supportive system and the framework of Krishna's culture, basically, so that we can sooner or later get there. So now, let me say a few little words about our topic of ideal family life. So once we understand how these two cultures are just so different, we can also understand that actually family life, if we enter family life according to mundane expectations and visions and attitudes, this will be very, very different than entering family life and spiritual culture. Right? That's pretty clear, I think. In a culture where sense gratification is the all in all, obviously there's a very different attitude to family life. Huh? Actually, the attitude is sense gratification, romance, subtle and gross sense enjoyment. Whereas in spiritual culture, there's a completely different attitude, completely different vision, completely different expectation on family life. And I dare say, I hope this is not too provocative or something. Well, I like to sometimes be a little bit provocative to shake things up a little bit. So I dare say we actually have not made fully that transformation yet to really make our family life into an ashram. This realization actually came to me only recently. For many years I was not even thinking so much about this, but recently it dawned upon me that actually to really make our family life an ashram, this requires a deep transformation. It's not an external thing of just wearing tilak and neck beads and walking around with japa beads and then our family life is grihastha ashram. No, no, no. It requires so much more than that. It requires a whole paradigm shift. We actually have to transform our expectations, our desires, our attitudes towards family life. Isn't it? You agree with that? Yes, yeah. And again, I hope I'm not too provocative, but just looking at our high divorce rate, 60% divorce rate, I think that speaks for itself. It shows we are not there yet, right? Divorce is not part of grihastha ashram. So if we actually make our family life into an ashram, there is no question of divorce. And as long as we have this high divorce rate, it means we are not quite there yet. We are still with one foot in mundane family life, in Grihamedi culture. And it's not surprising because we are surrounded by Grihamedi culture. And I don't even know exactly what are the rules and regulations of Grihamedi life, but I dare say Grihamedi life probably has quite a bit of piety in there. There might be so many different rules and regulations also, which we might not even be following yet. Huh? So in any case, let us be clear, we are surrounded by mundane family life. We come from that background. We come from families, most of us, unless we grew up in Krishna Consciousness, but that's our experience, mundane family life. We are surrounded by it. So much propaganda is there, especially when we live in the Western world, you know, heavy propaganda. And these surroundings affect us on such a subtle level, actually. We don't even realize. We think we make our decisions and we have our opinions, but actually we are just a product of our environment, actually. So these influences are very deep, very subtle, not so easy to transform them. Not so easy. In fact, I have a 15-hour course on this topic, Ideal Family Life. I'm teaching it every year here in Mayapur in January and in so many other countries of the world, in Europe and Ukraine and also Canada and so many places. So yeah, it's a whole, but it requires a whole deep transformation. So now let us begin by maybe inviting Subhekshana Prabhu to enlighten us on entering family life. And I would like to share a few little thoughts about Subhekshana Prabhu he actually went to the Gurukul here, and so he is a Mayapur boy, we can say.
100%.
100%. As far as I know, you never took any material education or anything, right? Or did you study in a university or something?
In Gurukul we get both. We learn about how to do it.
Can somebody adjust the sound system there? Yeah, so he went through the Gurukul, and you never left Mayapur, right? You stayed in Mayapur, did so many things. So he's a wonderful example of a person who is so capable and doing so many things, and he's never gone to a university. He did the Gurukul training, because very often we come across this, that parents are very much in doubt, oh, my children, they should better go to the university and get some proper degree or something. But here we are, Subhakshana Prabhu never did that. And now I heard he's the chairman of the Mayapur Management Board, right? So he's actually a very valuable member of our Mayapur community. His wife is doing homeschooling with a whole big bunch of kids there in her flat. I saw her the other day. I actually know his wife since she is 10 or something. Yes, and this might be a blowout to many of us here, but he shared with me that he met
Amanina Mahanadena Kirtina Sadahava. And then I was very happy to see that a group of devotees, they're called the Grihastha Vision Team. How many here have heard of the Grihastha Vision Team? So, well, if you haven't, then check them out. Excuse me? 10 years. 10 years they've been together. I mean, the group has been developing. So, those of us who were at the ILS might have visited their booth, and they have a little brochure, the Trinadapi model for Grihastha life. I thought, this is perfect. This is our spiritual culture. This is our secret of success in the Grihastha ashram. Today, I visited Godrudri with a friend, and he was commenting, and we were talking about how Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur spoke about the Grihastha ashram. And actually, I'd heard this some days back when we were celebrating the disappearance of Gaur Kishore? Or anyway, either the appearance or disappearance, I don't remember. But a devotee was quoting Gaur Kishore Das Babaji. And I was a little taken aback, because here's a Babaji, it's a Vairagi. And apparently Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur repeated this, and we also have heard it from Srila Prabhupada, that in the Grihastha ashram, it's a partnership of mutual respect, of mutual service. Some days back I was contemplating about, here I am, I'm getting older, and I'm looking at the future, and I'm thinking, what a wonderful gift I have. I have the opportunity to serve a Vaishnava 24 hours a day. Grihastha ashram gives you the opportunity to be in constant service to another devotee. In this mood of service and of respect, and not, like the verse says, asking for or demanding respect, but offering that respect. The holy name then becomes the reservoir of happiness. I don't know that these tips are going to come out anywhere else, but the Grihastha Vision team put out some tips, some secrets to success. And although I suppose I should be quoting the Srimad Bhagavatam, but I'm not that scholarly, So I'm going to quote someone from outside of our Bhagavad culture, but I can't say that this person is, irreligious. I don't know him, but I just know that he doesn't have a spiritual name, so I assume that he's not a member. What's his name here? Joseph something. He wrote a book. And Frank Pittman's book. Okay? He said, marriage is not supposed to make you happy. It's supposed to make you married. And once you are safely and totally married, you have a structure of security and support from which you can find your own happiness. So, to me, the Bhagavatam and its direction for Grihastha Ashram, coupled with what was just mentioned by Subhakshana, and Devaki Mataji was mentioning, commitment. That when we commit to this ashram, we commit to this partnership, till death do us part. Of course, maybe there's sannyas in some people's lives, but at least for me, it's like that. Then we have a framework, we have a platform, we have the safety, we have the security of that relationship, of commitment, two people committed to each other in sickness and in health. I mean, again, I know there's Vedic versions of all of this. I've heard them in the Jagyas, right? I mean, there's the same things, the sickness, health, all that's all there. But I just don't know the Sanskrit, so I'm using the Western version. But that commitment to be with each other gives you the safety and the security to pursue the full happiness that the holy name provides. And the happiness of the holy name provides you with the happiness you need to live in sometimes difficult situations. Being in a partnership with another individual, being two individuals with various differences in personalities, differences in their past and their karmas and all kinds of differences, will always, well, almost always, I guess there may be that rare occasion where everything is always perfect. Maybe that's happening. I don't think so. But for most of us, there will be difficulties. And if we are depending for our happiness, our inner happiness, on what we get from each other, that's actually got a word. It's called codependency. It means that you are not able to discover your inner happiness without the approval or the participation of someone else. Of course, we can be codependent with Sri Krishna. That's a different type of relationship. But when we're in this sphere, we have to have our relationship with the Holy Name and have the shelter of the Holy Name and the shelter of Srimad Bhagavatam to nurture that inner world, that inner life. So, I don't have a lot to say about Srimad Bhagavatam and the Holy Name and marriage. I know that I would be, I don't think without them, I can't imagine how, my wife and I have been married now, will be 38 years. And we had a little more than 7 days. What was it? 2 weeks, I think? Huh? And most of the 2 weeks you were in Australia. I think we had our actual quote-unquote association was 3 days or something like that. And Krishna Dasi, you told us just now that you were in Purnamasi. What was it? Few days. The compatibility, of course, is very important. I mean, that's why Subhakshana described how entering the Grihastha ashram should be done with the help of your seniors, those who can advise you, who can help you understand. No matter how well we think we can perceive the other person, often we get blinded by something else, some other sort of, filter that doesn't let us see things as they are. And our elders, our gurus, our family members. I also have to say that one of the strengths that I'm very grateful for is that somehow or other in my family, although I'm the only practicing devotee, my children are devotees, but my brothers and sister and my parents and so on. Somehow or other, there's no divorce in our. My parents were married for 60-something years, and their parents were married for 60-something years, and both my brothers have been married for a long time. So that's also helped me stay committed when I didn't feel like being committed. There's a certain, I think, in social. That's why I think our society. Some people may feel that some of the values in this Mayapur community about divorce are a little, why make such a big deal out of it? But in one sense, and maybe I'm going out on a limb here, but having a social pressure to stay together, yes, there may be times when it just can't work. And that, I'm not one who's going to say that there's no possibility of a divorce or a separation, because Prabhupada also gave that option, that a couple who couldn't live together can live apart and still be married. And we have quite a number of those nice devotees in our society who chose that path. So that's always an option. But living in a society that values, that puts a value, it may help us in those times when things look, like you're ready to just go the extra mile. And the Bhagavatam and our practice, of chanting and kirtan, will help us through those things. It's something that we can take shelter of when we don't have an answer. We're confused. We're bewildered. We don't know what to do when we're faced with some difficult circumstance. There is magic. There's magic in Bhagavatam and Srinam. It's not a mechanical thing that, okay, we'll just do this and it will result in something. Krishna is there. Krishna wants, not only wants, but is working, doing everything, allowing, what do you say, man proposes, God disposes, but it's sanctioning. Everything's being sanctioned by him for our benefit. And especially sometimes to get us to take shelter of him in the Bhagavatam and the holy names when we're in difficulty. And then seeing their power. So those are the things that I thought I could share with you. Number one, from the holy name, that the same principle that gives us entrance into the chanting of the holy name, the principle of mutual respect, or actually humility and respect, the principle of tolerance, the principle of forgiveness, that these principles of humility, tolerance, forgiveness, respect, that we bring to our chanting of the holy names, these same principles, as we bring them to our grihastha life, they will give us the foundation that we can chant the holy names constantly in our grihastha ashram and find unlimited happiness. Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Thank you very much, Guru, for your wonderful words. I guess also when Bhagavatam and the holy name are actually really the foundation of our marriage, that will give us that vision that each and every situation in our life we can connect with Krishna being behind it. That will enable us to actually see each and every situation in our life as Krishna trying to teach us something. That we understand there must be some reason why Krishna is putting me in this situation. So if Bhagavatam and the holy name are really the foundation of our family life, then only we can have that vision, that we always can see Krishna's hand, Krishna's arrangement in each and every situation. And that will give us the strength to work through difficulties with that strong commitment. But if Bhagavatam and the holy name are not the first priority in life, then we will have this mundane approach to marriage. And we will walk out as soon as it is not pleasing our senses anymore. Right? And also when we talk about foundation, we know from construction, the foundation is the most important thing in any construction, the foundation. And depending on how strong the foundation is, we proportionally can build higher. Right? So Bhagavatam, holy name, has to be the foundation to our family life. And then we have a strong footing, and our vision will be transcendental. And that will give us the strength to overcome difficulties. So one little thing I'd like to share from my times in Bangladesh. When I traveled in Bangladesh, I came to notice that actually no serious Hindu lives surrounded by Muslims. Most Hindus live in an area where other Hindus are living. And in the center of the Hindu areas there's always some Hindu temples. And people still have that tradition, that culture, that in the morning time, in the evening time, people go and visit the mandir. They go to the Hindu temple. So from that I could understand this is how Prabhupada extracted that principle of morning and evening program. Right? That gives us that strength, that focus to our daily activities, morning, evening program. So, and now, of course, to make Bhagavatam and the holy name really the center and the foundation to our family life, it requires that we live, if possible, in walking distance to a temple. That's the beauty of this Mayapur community, that we are living in walking distance or bicycle ride distance from the temple. And it is just so natural to go to the morning program, to attend the Bhagavatam class. So making Bhagavatam and the holy name really the foundation to our family life, it means we actually have to mold our life in such a way that really it is the center of our family life. That has to be the first criteria. Can I read and hear Bhagavatam in the Association of Devotees regularly? Can I chant the holy name regularly in the Association of Devotees? But if we live 2 hours away from the nearest temple, well, then already Bhagavatam, holy name, very difficult to really make that the pivot point of our family life. We need the Association of Devotees. So now let us move on to a few more principles, secrets of success. Actually, one thing I want to share as well, in this 15-hour course we are usually having, we have this exercise. We collect on a flip chart all the different challenges, all the different traps, all the different difficulties which we might be facing in married life. And then, after going through the secrets of success, we have a look whether these secrets of success offer the solution to those traps and challenges and difficulties. And it's a wonderful eye-opener to realize these simple secrets of success, they all offer the perfect solution to all the difficulties in married life. Yes. If we can just really apply them in our life, we will master all the challenges quite easily, actually. So, first secret of success was Bhagavatam and Holy Name being the center of our family life. So now we would like to invite His Holiness Bhakti-Rasamrita Maharaj to come and enlighten us on the next set of secrets of success, which is simply living, devotee association, having a mentor, and getting regular spiritual guidance as keys to success within married life. Okay, thank you, Maharaj.
Om Jnanatimirandhasya Jnananjanashalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kada Mahyam Dadati Svapadantatam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yudapadakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sakrajatam Sahagana Raghunatanvitam Tam Sajivam Satvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitamscha Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Keshtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swamin Nitinayane Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharini Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarini Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. Firstly, I'd like to apologize for coming late. I was held up somewhere. I wanted to attend the entire program, but nevertheless, I'm glad I was able to come at least. Devaki Mataji asked me to speak on 3 topics in connection with Grihastha life. One is simple living and not simply living. Simply living means something quite different. Simply living means just living without a purpose, without anything, just simply living, right? So I modified the topic a little bit, and instead of speaking on simply living, I'll speak on simple living.
That's what I meant.
Yes. And second is the Association of Devotees, and the third is on having a mentor. Like, so certain very valuable things for Grihasthas. The Bhagavatam says that the very nature of household life is that complexity gets introduced from the very beginning. As Prabhupada used to say, man alone is fine, woman alone is fine, but man, woman come together, then there is complexity. Ato griha kshetra sutapta vittai janasya mohoyam aham mamiti. So, because the household needs things, there is a house required, there is some property, source of income, the kshetra required. Then there are children, and there is wealth, So all of these things accumulate and creates complexity in life. By the very nature of the ashram, it is like that. Even in traditional Vedic culture, there was an element of that, even in ordinary household life, except for those brahmanas who were really living very renounced lives. And we hear of such brahmanas as well, who would go out every day in the afternoon to beg, and then they would come back and share with the family members whatever they got by way of bhiksha. Such extremes, of course, are not practical in this day and age. But the principle of trying to live as simple as possible in the circumstances that we live in is very important. Not only is the Grihastha ashram basically a little complex, but the modern day culture has made it enormously so, further complex. Because the way the modern society is structured and the philosophy that drives the modern society is what we call consumerism, consumerist society, which just fuels the desire in its constituents to have more. And we have all these sophisticated techniques of advertising, marketing, and all the jargon that is there, which makes the person feel that I need something even when he or she actually doesn't need it. So the modern day culture is just fueling this insatiable appetite for wanting more and more and more, and especially so in the urban areas. And thanks to television and all these other things, it's also percolating into the rural areas. I do visit villages, interior villages, as a part of my service. I spend a certain amount of time, a small amount of time. And I see that now even in interior villages there is television connectivity. And we have the government of the day promoting computerization in the interior villages. So poor things there in the village, they've never seen anything beyond the village, but now they're exposed to Bollywood, and they see all these glamorous looking people wearing all kinds of clothes, and they see in all sides of contraptions, they see the glitter and glamour of the city, the multi-storied buildings, and they get bewildered. And they want to leave their simple life and come to the city, and they think they'll be happy over there. But when they come to the city, they realize what life is. They have to live in slums, ghettos, and they have a miserable life. They're exploited. So the modern day culture is something that is just creating havoc in the minds and hearts of people. So the Srimad Bhagavatam, our entire philosophy says this fire has to be doused. Just make it simple, simple, simple. Reduce your so-called necessities. In one purport in the Srimad Bhagavatam, Srila Prabhupada uses the curious but very telling phrase, unnecessary necessities. In other words, we accumulate these things which we think are necessary, but they're actually not necessary. So they're unnecessary, quote-unquote, necessities. They simply add to the complexity and burden of our life. So when it comes to simple living and high thinking, yes, we have examples even in ISKCON of farm projects where devotees try to live really simply. And Srila Prabhupada did want many of our devotees and the society at large to gravitate slowly towards such a kind of life, because this kind of living is predominated by the mode of goodness. And simplicity is one of the elements of the mode of goodness. And when there is simplicity in the mode of goodness, the mind becomes calm, it becomes peaceful, and therefore it is a conducive situation in which to hear and chant about Krishna, which is our fundamental task. But of course, the reality of life is that not everybody can live like that. Even amongst our devotees in this movement, what to speak of those outside? By living in the outside world, one becomes so habituated to these things, to all the so-called luxuries and comforts of life, that we just cannot adjust to a simple life. It's very hard. During the ILS, I was attending one seminar, and there was a beautiful presentation about a farm project in Siberia. And one of the things they mentioned there was, they were discussing the topic of why is it so hard for devotees to shift to such a simple place, to come to a farm and live a happy life and then just chant Hare Krishna. The economics is simple, sociology is simple, you can chant Hare Krishna much easier. And the answer was very revealing, very interesting. They said, generally people don't want to shift to such a place because there's no passion there. And we're so used to passion, we take shelter of passion, we take shelter of all the things, the glitter and glamour of the city offers. We go to the supermarket, the mall, the shopping malls, and feel a kind of a shelter. So nice. I want to be here. So that is the effect of the mode of passion. It just gives us an illusory feeling of shelter. And we want to see all the cars and the TV and everything like that. So we become addicted to that. And we can't leave it. And when we come to the countryside, which is in the mode of goodness, we just can't tolerate the peace. We can't tolerate the goodness. We cannot tolerate the simplicity. And we rush back to the city. I'm also associated with a farm project. We're trying to make a self-sufficient farm project in South India. And we see that devotees, when they come there, even devotees, they cannot stay for more than a day or two. It all looks very nice and romantic and everything when you come and you encounter the nice forest and the peace and the calm and everything. But after some time, they get agitated by the peace. They get agitated by the goodness because we're just not used to it. But gradually, if you develop the taste for simple living, then, we will get accustomed to it. Then we will start actually liking it. And those devotees who stay there, they love it and they're addicted to that. And now they cannot bear the thought of being in the city. Even for a day, they go there only when it's really necessary to go, otherwise they don't. But coming back to the point I was making earlier, yes, it is not practical to expect that everybody in the city is going, even in our movement, that they will all come and live in a farm project. We don't have so many farm projects in the first place. We haven't developed our farm economies. We haven't developed the sociology that goes with it. So it's not possible to expect everybody to come. What then? What is the next option? The option is that wherever we are, let us try to simplify our existence. How does one do that? By minimizing or at least reducing the kind of things that we like to purchase and buy and keep in our house and use. For example, the next time we want to buy a new washing machine or a new appliance or something else, it's good to reflect, do I need this? And if the answer is a yes, perhaps it's time to ask the next question, do I really need this? And if the answer is still a yes, then perhaps the next question, do I really need this? And I think when we sufficiently reflect on this and look back and think about all that we've heard in all the Bhagavatam classes and everything, you might think, actually, I don't really think I need this. I think I can get by. I'm not going to die if I don't have the latest washing machine or the latest refrigerator or the latest, mobile phone with all sorts of facilities and so on. It's possible to live happily. I mean, nobody died. None of our ancestors have died for want of a mobile phone. But people are dying now because of mobile phones. Do you know, for example, that India has the highest rates of deaths due to selfies? People get very adventurous with selfies.
Story Srila Prabhupada mentions, where Parvati, she speaks to Lord Shiva, and she says, Prabhu, you You have so many followers, you're worshipped by so many great souls, and I have a big service. I have to maintain this material energy. We don't have a house. We should get a house. So he wanted to please his wife. And so she said, we're living under a tree, so we need a house. How else? Such important service you had, honored by so many. So he agreed, and they had a house built. And then they had what is called the housewarming ceremony. So that ceremony went on, and they performed the yagyas, and so many guests came, great sadhus, saints, others came, so many guests. So at the end, it was time to remunerate the honored guests, the sadhus, the sages, with some gifts, because that is culture. That if esteemed gifts, sadhus, personalities come to your home and bless your home, then it is your responsibility to offer some gift in return. This is etiquette, this is culture, this is respect. But when it was time, Lord Shiva realized he had nothing to give. So then he thought, oh, I have a house. So he gave the house. And then he was back underneath the tree again. So this kind of illustrates, charity in its utmost. Perhaps we're not on that level. Vasudeva Datta Thakur was also known as a very charitable and magnanimous person. His heart was so soft, his mind was so full of compassion for all living entities, that when he ever saw anyone in need in any way, being a householder, and he also had a family, he would see what he had or what he could offer to that person to make them better in their situation, to give them something. He always wanted to uplift and make others, what we say, happy, satisfied their needs. And so he would give everything he had, and he could not even maintain himself. He also had some wealth. So Lord Chaitanya was very concerned that Vasudeva Datta Thakur is not taking proper care of his own household, and he's simply taking care of others in need. So he put Shivananda Sain as a manager for the household accounts of Vasudeva Datta Thakur. Another example of a magnanimous householder. Culture of respect, the culture of honor. As Maharaj quoted that verse, Ahokriya Shetra Satapa Vitaya Janasamoham Hamamiti, that in this ashram that we live in, Grihastha ashram, it is very much easy to become ahamameti. This is mine and this is I. And these two principles are the actual foundation of material consciousness. Everything centers around that. This is me, my body, my gender, my family, mine, or I, my possessions, my husband, my wife, my children, my land, my body. This is the conception of material life in all aspects. So, spiritual life, as we understand, means nirmama, nothing is mine, everything belongs to Krishna, everything is Krishna's energy, and Krishna has given me something according to my needs or my quota in order for me to live. But not only to live, but to use that as a service to others. So Grihastha life, and in any ashram, we can't just not only say Grihastha life, but any ashram, the mood is seva. Seva to Krishna, seva to the spiritual master, seva to the Vaishnavas, seva to persons in general, seva to all living entities. But especially in Grihastha life, the tendency to fall into that mindset of I and mine is easily reinforced by the lifestyle of having so many of these other arrangements that somewhat appears to be needed in our life. Many of it is, up to a certain point. But how to use that in such a way that we don't become attached to it, and at the same time it elevates our consciousness in devotion to Krishna. So therefore the principle of charity to others is done in the mood of becoming detached from what we have, but at the same time pleasing those persons we come in contact, as we know as guests or persons who come to our home. I'll give you an example. We have the story of Ramanujacharya. Ramanujacharya was traveling with some of his brahmacharis. He was going from place to place and preaching. He came into one area, and he remembered that he had two householder devotees living in this. One was very, very wealthy and rich, and one was practically unable to maintain himself day to day. He was always begging just to maintain his family, just to get enough food to eat. So he said to his brahmacharis he wanted to stay at the home of the rich person. And he said, I am coming to his house tonight. You please go and inform him that his Guru Maharaj will be coming. Please make the arrangements. So these two brahmacharis went, and they came to this home of this very rich person. And upon opening the door and seeing these two brahmacharis, he was thinking, oh my God, brothers have come. Welcome. So he came in, they came in, and he said, why have you come? Oh, Guru Maharaj is here. He has sent us. He wants to tell you that he wants to stay at your home tonight, so please make all arrangements. The devotee, this rich person, immediately became overwhelmed with joy and happiness and became so excited. He called his assistants, his servants, family members, announced the news, and immediately, in a very enthusiastic way, started to dictate all the things that were necessary for that arrangement. But what happened was, he completely neglected the two brahmacharis. He didn't even welcome, he just welcomed them, and when he heard why they came, that's all he had to do with them. He didn't even offer them a place to sit. And in other words, he didn't give them the proper respect as a guest. Later on, they left, and they came back to Ramanujacharya. And Ramanujacharya said to them, well, what did he say? Oh, he was so excited, Guru Maharaj. When he heard you were coming, he immediately was making all kinds of arrangements. No, how did he treat you? Well, his enthusiasm for you, hearing about your coming, he didn't really say anything to us other than the initial greeting. Ramanujacharya said, I'm not going. Because he didn't treat you properly, honor you properly, or give you the proper respect, I'm not going. And he went out to the home of this poor personality, I can't remember his name, and he sent his brahmacharis also there, but he wasn't even home. His wife was home. He was out begging, and they were so poor that the wife could not even come out to greet the brahmacharis because she didn't even have enough clothes. But when she heard that their Guru Maharaj was there, she was coming. She was mortified, thinking, oh my God, we don't have nothing. Guru Maharaj is coming. We have to do whatever's necessary to satisfy. Then she remembered, oh, there's this one merchant. She's going to this merchant every once in a while, and whenever little money her husband begs, she comes and she buys a few things. But this grocer, this merchant, was attracted to her in a physical way, and he was always trying to lure her in. But she was very chaste and very faithful and very, what we say, devotional to her husband and to Krishna. And so she would completely ignore this person's advances. But now she was thinking, I have to do something. My spiritual master is coming. If he comes and we're not able to welcome him nicely, what will happen to us? And so she thought, oh, well, I'll go to this grocer and I'll satisfy whatever needs he wants, and then I'll ask him for groceries. So she was willing to sacrifice her chastity in order to satisfy her spiritual master. So she went and she explained the situation. He became overwhelmed. He became finally she's now coming to her senses, according to his understanding. And he said, take whatever you want. You can have as much as you want. And she said, okay. And then I will also come back and satisfy your desires. So he gave her everything. She went home and she prepared this wonderful meal. In the meantime, her husband came home and said, where did you get all this? Well, Guru Maharaj is coming tonight. And then she felt really, really bad. But I must say, that grocer was always after me in the wrong way. I've submitted myself to him in order to get these groceries in order to please our spiritual master. So her husband said, you did the right thing. And so she prepared a wonderful meal. Ramanujacharya came. He was amazed. How did she get all this? He didn't say anything. She served so nicely, and her husband was there, and she assisted. And he felt so pleased, so happy, and he felt so blessed. And then, at one point, she felt very guilty on how she was able to arrange for her to get all these ingredients in order to make this nice arrangement for her spiritual master. And Ramanujacharya understood. So he took prasadam and he said, here, you take these remnants of mine and you give them to the grocer when you go to see him. So she dutifully did. That night she came. Oh, she's coming. She's coming. And he was getting very excited. And then she said, thank you very much for giving those groceries. My spiritual master was served so nicely because of you. And he wants to offer you something, so here's some of the remnants from the meal. So as soon as he took those remnants, all of a sudden, his heart became different. He started to shed tears. His mind became pacified. And he looked at her as a saintly woman. He said, you are a great saint. You are so wonderful. You were willing to do this, what we say, irreligious act, just to please your spiritual master. You are my mother. Please go home and be satisfied. And anytime you come here, I'll give you whatever you need. So this is a beautiful story of devotion to the spiritual master and how one is willing to sacrifice anything to please the Lord, to please the guest. So this is, of course, a unique example. But the mood is selfless surrender. Therefore, in Grihastha life, we have a great opportunity to serve so many living entities, because in that ashram, the facilities there are given by Krishna in so many wonderful ways. So we can offer food, we can offer a place. Prabhupada used to say when he was a young boy, his father and mother were always honoring so many guests. Sometimes he would say there would be no less than 4 sadhus at his house at a time. And they were always served so nicely. And the mood is not only serving guests, but serving in a way that is pleasing. Pleasing means that one should never feel inconvenienced. It is also mentioned in the scriptures that when a guest comes to your home, you should see that person as sent by the Supreme Personality of Godhead directly. And not think, oh, they've come at the wrong time. In other words, feeling inconvenienced by the appearance of a guest. Sometimes you might feel that way. You shouldn't show it. You shouldn't show it. Always welcoming a guest with a place to sit, some sweet words, at least a glass of water. I think Devaki was mentioning the culture in Bangladesh. I remember I went to Bangladesh on Devaki's encouragement many years ago, and I also experienced a lot of that, what we say, real, solid Vaishnav culture and hospitality. I went to one home, and when I came, I was arranged to stay at that person's home overnight. And there was a family there, a mother, a father, and some children. And I just came and I just wanted a place to stay overnight. But they wanted to do so many other services. They wanted to offer me arti. They wanted to wash my feet. I said, no way. I told them I already took bath this morning. There's no need to. You know, that's the excuse I use every time I
Hare Krishna. Can I have a little bit more song? Hare Krishna. Om Agyantimanvasya Agyamanjala Salakaya Chakshurmilitam Dana Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manopistam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Upakaramayam Narati Swaparantikam Namam Vishnupada Krishna Pasa Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Nityanamane Namaste Saraswati Deve Govani Pachayane Niyavishesha Shunyavadi Pasata Rishatarine Panchakapa Tuvipasha Kripa Sindhivevata Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Pavanityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaur Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Can you make it stand a little lower? And somebody should put one chair on the stage. Just have to get organized here. 1 second.
The train's coming down the rail track and he wants a real, I don't know what you call it, cool picture with him coming in. And then he does a mistime and then he's knocked down by the train, he dies. People taking selfies on the edge of a cliff and they fall down and die. These are true stories. They come out in the newspapers. So somehow or the other, this razzle-dazzle, this glitter, glamour of the consumerist society is so overpowering. It affects us as devotees as well. And nowadays, you know, if you want to be in the movement, you have to survive, you have to preach, you need that computer, you need that phone, you need so many other things. So it's very difficult. We have the principle of Yukta Vairagya that we have to use for preaching. It's a sublime principle. At the same time, it's also a little dangerous because we tend to get carried away with it many times. So as far as possible, we can reduce the things we need. And in environmental studies, you have these 3 ideas, you know, reduce, reuse, recycle. And I think that things can be applied here. When I grew up as a child, I remember at our home, we would recycle things. We'd have those brass vessels and something happened, you know, we'd go to the blacksmith or the ironmonger, and he would do something with the fire and the vessel was back. And we used to use that. And whatever textbooks our older siblings used to use, you know, those textbooks would be used by us. In fact, sometimes even the clothes and some of the toys and some of these things would be passed on. But the modern day culture is a waste-oriented culture. Do you know that just like you have GDP and all of these economic indices, One of the indexes of economic development is the waste disposal index, how much you wasted. So the modern culture, because it's consumption oriented, is also waste oriented. You just take something, use a little bit of it and then throw away. Many times people say, we should be paper free and better to just use the computer because you don't use paper. And then the paper you need to, destroy a tree and then you make paper from that. But I really wonder, even when we use laptops and so on and mobile phones, the kind of environmental damage that happens to make that, and when you dispose that appliance or that instrument, what happens to that after we have disposed it is a whole subject in itself. The kind of environmental damage that happens as a result of these things is unthinkable. So perhaps at least the trees can be replanted. But what do you do with all this other electronic gadgets that are accumulated for years and years, millions and millions of these pieces? They go to the so-called developing world and they pollute that, and the developing countries send it off to all these other countries so they can't see it. So we have to also simplify our life by trying to reduce what we need, what we think we need. We have to recycle what we have, bring back the old traditional way of doing things, reuse them, and in this way we'll be able to substantially simplify our life, and we will see that life becomes so much more happier. Today it's a philosophy of trying to increase what you have, and a large element of this is to show the world what I have. There used to be a famous advertisement for a television which says, "Neighbors envy, owners pride." So basically people in the world outside try to accumulate more and more because it fuels envy in the minds of others. And therefore Srila Prabhupada told that humorous story about the lady of the house who had 100 degrees fever and the maidservant had 104, and the lady of the house was furious that how can the maidservant have something more than me? And Prabhupada explained that it's basically the fever of material acquisitiveness that is raging all over the world. So as devotees, we should try to avoid succumbing to this fever by trying to live simply, and our household life will become so much more happier and more peaceful. There's a lot more to say on this topic, but we have to move on to the next part of it, which is the Association of Devotees. Of course, that's a fundamental principle of devotional life, not just of householder life. So definitely it also applies very importantly for householder life. Yes, we've all heard the saying that we must make our home a temple, absolutely necessary. But sometimes what happens is that devotees make their home a temple, yes, but they forget to make the temple their home. It's also important to come to the temple. Once we've made our home a temple, how did we get the knowledge, the understanding, the enthusiasm to make our home a temple? Because we associated with devotees previously. Therefore, we understood the importance of doing this and we did it. And now that we've made our home a temple, there is one thing very important that we don't usually get sitting at home, and that is the Association of Devotees. The Association of Devotees is the root for all good things, especially for perfection of Krishna consciousness. We hear about Krishna, we come to the temple, we see the deities, and there's so many other things we can do. We celebrate festivals with the devotees. So inasmuch as it is important for us to make our home a temple, it is also important for us to make the temple our home, which means that we come regularly to the temple and take the Association of Devotees. Of course, the Association of Devotees is not restricted only to the temple. We can also have other gatherings where devotees get together, maybe not in the temple, but elsewhere, and we hear and chant about Krishna and so on. So it's a very, very important principle for us to associate with devotees. And lastly, the idea of having a mentor. Yes, because we all need some guidance. Nobody is independent in this world. We all are dependent on something or someone, and by the nature of this world, which is so bewildering, we will all find ourselves being perplexed at so many turns in our life, and all the more in household life where things are indeed a little more complicated. So to have senior devotees who may guide us is very important. The way that initiation and so on is structured within ISKCON, we may have one Diksha Guru who may have a very large number of disciples. And it may not be possible, and certainly is not possible, for that Diksha Guru to pay personal attention to every single disciple. It's just not possible. So therefore, to have guides who are accessible to us, who may not be our Diksha Gurus, they may be Shiksha Gurus, they may be mentors, they may be guides, they may be at varying levels of spiritual advancement. Those things are also necessary. That is also how the traditional system of education happened, where the Guru would teach the senior students, the seniors would teach the juniors, and so on, and everybody helped everybody else, and it was a nice family kind of atmosphere. So also, this kind of an atmosphere where in the community of devotees there is a bonding, where we help each other, we guide each other, and specifically we also take guidance from the senior devotees. That is very, very helpful for the progress in Krishna consciousness and in understanding how to live in Grihastha life and be Krishna conscious. All these three topics are very big topics, but I'm looking forward to hearing from our latest speakers, and I do not want to hog all the time, so I will stop here. And thank you very much for Devaki Mataji for inviting me here, and thank you very much all of you for your kind attention. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
Just a little story came to my mind. Probably many of us here know Atto Krishna Prabhu. I hope he doesn't mind me sharing this story, but it just fits perfectly to the topic of simple living. His wife is from Bangladesh. I know him we joined actually around the same time in Australia. So when he got married to his wife from Bangladesh, he was saying to me, "I'm so lucky my wife is from Bangladesh. She doesn't even know what an iron is. I don't have to buy her an iron. She doesn't even know what it is." And then 2 years later, when I met him in Mayapur, he was saying to me, "Guess what? My wife saw at the neighbors a fridge. So now she wants a fridge. She saw it there. Before she didn't know what a fridge is, but now she wants a fridge. Now I have to buy a fridge." So I thought this was very humorous, what it means to really try and keep one's life very simple and be satisfied with the bare necessities. And another little situation comes to my mind. Some 10, 12 years ago in my flat here in the Goshala, the water pump broke down. It was after this huge flood we had, where Prabhupada's Bhajan Kuti was washed away. So our water pump didn't work for 2 weeks. And it was during the GBC meeting, so I was cooking for my Guru Maharaj at that time. And we had to carry every single drop of water in the bucket upstairs for 2 weeks. Every single drop for, taking baths, for washing the vegetables, and for 2 weeks. And after those 2 weeks, I thought, gee, maybe no need for water pump. Actually, we got so used to it, we got so much into a certain system of, already in the evenings, getting the water so we could take bath in the morning, and we got in such a regulated system, we didn't even miss the pump anymore. And I was thinking, there's millions of people in the world who live like this, who don't have running water. And as we know, the gopis were always going and carrying the water and so on. So I started thinking, well, maybe no need for a water pump actually. But of course we got a water pump. But in any case, just as a little example that one can actually get so used to simple situations. It's just the mind. And then once we adjust, we have to adjust, we are perfectly happy without it. Yes, it really works that way. And in regards to mentorship, it is really like that we actually could save ourselves from making so many mistakes in our life if we would just take guidance. But somehow, unfortunately, we often think we can work it out all ourselves, and we repeat the same mistakes which other devotees have made. We repeat the same things. And it would just be, our life would just be so much more smooth if we would just accept guidance from somebody who's got more experience facing a certain challenge which we are facing. Yes. Okay, so let us move on to our next topic. So these were some of the main secrets of success. Bhagavatam and Holy Name being the foundation, then simple living, not simply living, but simple living, keeping our life simple, and devotee association, and taking guidance, having mentorship. We can do that exercise at home. You make a list of all the challenges and traps and difficulties in married life, and you will realize that these secrets of success, they offer the solution. It is quite eye-opening. You can do it for yourself at home. So now let us move on. Our next speaker is His Holiness Janmashtami Swami Maharaj, and he will enlighten us on the purifying duty of the Grihastha ashram, meaning giving in charity, and the importance of receiving guests, Vaishnava hospitality. Maharaj, kindly come up on the stage and share something on this.
Agyan Timidandasya Kenajana Salakaya Chaksu Indritamena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Shrimakti Bhakti Vedanta Swami Tinamine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gaurvani Pachayane Nirvisheshna Shunya Vadi Pastyatya Desatane Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Sivasadi Gauda Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Before I begin my topic, I was just thinking after I heard Maharaj's talk about simple living, I was just going through my mind all the stuff I want to throw out. I was really inspired by that, and I felt really thinking how I now have a chance to get rid of a lot of stuff I really don't need. Really. Thank you, Maharaj. It was wonderful. And plus whatever else you said in relationship to those association. Giving in charity, and also the importance of receiving and welcoming guests. But I couldn't get out of it because they were so loving. And if I tried to somehow or other refuse whatever hospitality they were about to offer, I know they were going to cry. There was no doubt. So I didn't want to make them cry. So I had to accept. But Afterwards, they were so happy, and I realized just to please the host is part of coming as a guest. And pleasing the guest is really the duty of a host. So, in doing our service to guests, we should always do it in the mood of gratitude, in the mood of service, never in a begrudging mood, as it says in the Bhagavad Gita in one of the verses in relationship to charity. That charity sometimes is done with some personal motivation or some gain, or even in a begrudging mood. That pollutes the whole mood and takes away the element of devotion and the mood of hospitality. So as devotees, living in Grihastha ashram, it not only helps us to detach ourselves from all the amenities and all the arrangements that we have made to live, because as we were hearing from the previous speaker, these things are only opportunities to live, and live simply, and an opportunity to use these things in the service of the Lord, in the service of the Lord's devotees, and in service of persons in general. A culture of respect means to honor guests in such a way as that one feels happy to offer whatever they have for the pleasure of the guest. Now, that might sound a little extreme, and it is in some cases, but devotees stay within the boundary of proper Vaishnava etiquette and principles and not go outside of that, because sometimes if the guest asks for something that is outside of the moral principles, one should consider that as a transgression, and that is not service to the guest. But one should stay within that boundary and at the same time be happy. We have the example of how when one great sadhu, we're not sure who he was, came to the village of Ekachakra and stayed at the house of Hadai Pandit and Padmavati, the mother and father of Lord Nityananda. When Lord Nityananda was a little boy, they served them, that guest, that sadhu, so nicely. And when it was time for that sadhu to leave, of course, Hadai Pandit, being the perfect in hospitality, immediately said, "You have come. Is there anything else we can do for you? Do you have any other requests?" In other words, he was asking, "I've opened my home to you, but if there's anything else, I'm happy to do it." And he said something, the sadhu said something that was devastating. He said, "Actually, I'm traveling, and I'm traveling from place to place, and I'm in need of an assistant in order to facilitate my needs in travel. So please give me your son." Whoa. "Please give me your son, Nitai." And Hadai Pandit was stunned. He couldn't speak. But he said, Nitai is my life and soul. Please ask for something else." The sadhu wasn't about to change. So when he told his wife, Padmavati, what he had offered and what the sadhu had requested, she said, "Prabhu, whatever you feel you should do, please do." And he understood that when a Vaishnava gives their word, that word is like Shastra. It's like they're better to give up their life than to give up their word. So this is another example. I'm using extreme examples, but it's very helpful for us to understand, and even in the day-to-day life of our Krishna consciousness, what it means to honor guests and to be charitable in that service towards guests. Not only to guests, but to all living entities. It says that a grihastha sees the animals, the trees, the insects, and all living entities as their children, and they serve them by offering prasadam, to these living entities. Of course, that's about what you can do. It mentions in the Srimad Bhagavatam that there's a regulative principle that every day those that live in Grihastha ashram should offer prasadam to other living entities. Every day. Whether it's the ants in your house, or it's some sadhu who comes, or anybody, one has to offer prasadam. There's a story where Prabhupada was on a morning walk, and he was talking about Grihastha life. And then one Grihastha, a man, he came close to Prabhupada. Prabhupada had stopped and was talking. He said, Prabhupada, what is the first duty of those in Grihastha life? And Prabhupada said, put his cane down, the first duty is that before you take prasadam, you go out and you call 3 times, are there any hungry persons? Are there any hungry persons? Are there any hungry persons? And if no one comes, then you can take prasadam. So, and then Prabhupada began walking again. So the man was thinking, maybe Prabhupada didn't understand my question. So somehow or other, he again approached Prabhupada when he had stopped, and he asked a question again in a way that, Prabhupada, I heard, but I really don't understand. Can you please? Prabhupada said, yes. The first thing that you do before you eat is you go to the door and you call 3 times, are there any hungry persons? And then he went on. And the man still wasn't convinced that this is the main duty of those living in Grihastha life. So again, usually when you approach Prabhupada 3 times for the same question, you can expect to get smashed. Prabhupada was very patient in this particular situation. And again, he responded in the exact same way. So what does that mean? I mean, in Western countries, that might be a little impractical. But the idea is that we should offer prasadam to all other living entities. And then, of course, we can also take our own prasadam. But that is the duty of a grihastha. Not to think in terms of this is I and this is mine. So whatever we have is by the grace of the Lord. Whatever intelligence we have to use whatever we have is also given by the grace of the Lord. So that is an opportunity to serve. And we understand that serving Krishna is not the highest. Serving Krishna is parts and parcels is higher than serving Krishna by giving those persons an opportunity to advance in devotional service. So it's a great responsibility. I think we were hearing so many interesting points tonight by the various speakers, what it means to actually live within that ashram. In any ashram, the mood is seva to Krishna, seva to all living entities, and personal sacrifice in order to carry out that seva. But a devotee becomes happy by sacrifice. The devotee becomes benefited by sacrifice. The devotee becomes elevated in devotional service by sacrificing our time, our energy. Look what Srila Prabhupada did. He sacrificed everything for us. His health, he gave his intelligence, his health, his time, his energy, his resources, everything, so he could somehow or other show compassion to the fallen conditioned source. So we can do that on whatever level we are within the arrangement that Krishna has provided for us. And that is the duty of each and every ashram. But especially it is emphasized in the Grihastha ashram that charity is the number one principle of offering service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead by being charitable to all other living entities. Hare Krishna. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Maharaj. Yes, I do remember in the Chaitanya Charitamrita there is this one purport where Prabhupada says, when he thinks back of his childhood, there was not a single day where his parents did not at least receive 4 guests for prasadam. Minimum 4 guests, not a single day. Which means some days 8 guests or 10 guests, but not a single day less than 4 persons for prasadam. And we can just imagine if we would just apply a fraction of that, if each and every grihastha would just receive once a week a guest or twice a week, that would really contribute to our community development. It builds relationships immensely when you share that loving exchange of eating together, right? Yes, and yeah, that cultivates this selfless mood of service, because to receive gas is a lot of work, right? We have to first spend our hard-earned money and buy nice products. We have to stand for hours in the kitchen, cook it all. We have to serve it out. We have to clean up. It requires a lot of service, selfless service mood. And if this is not there, if we don't, cultivate this mood of receiving guests, then very easily we become miserly, we become selfish, we just cook behind closed doors all nice things for ourselves, and it breeds that miserly and self-centered mood. So that's why this hospitality is such an important point, and really Bangladesh is the place to experience it. My God. I want to share one little story. Some years ago I was traveling with a group of brahmacharis, and one Mataji was there also. We were about 10 people, and it was in Kumila. We were visiting Kumila, and the temple has quite a nice guest house there, but one family insisted, no, please don't stay in the guest house, come to my home, stay with us. So then, all right, the leader of our group agreed, let's go there and stay with them. So, and then when we got there, the family had only 2 rooms and a little kitchen and a bathroom. And I was perplexed, thinking, oh my God, we are 10 people and plus 5, 6 family members. How will that work out? So I said to one of the boys, so how will we stay here? And he was just smiling, don't worry, you will see, it will all work out. So then what they did, the family, they moved out of their 2 rooms. One room I had with one of the Madhajis, in the other room 10 brahmacharis piled in. They were all camping there somehow. And then one room with one big double bed. And the whole family, they were moving into the kitchen. And they simply put a bed sheet on the bare floor, and the whole family camped on the kitchen, including the old grandmother, Thakurma. And she was in ecstasy. Oh my God, she was jumping. This was her day of her whole life, that all these sadhus came to her house, her flat, and stayed there. She was so blissful, she was flying. The whole family was just so happy, all sleeping there on the bare floor. That's Vaishnava hospitality. And same thing in regards to eating. I mean, in Bangladesh, you never have a problem where to eat. People, it's their greatest honor to receive a preacher in their house, to feed them. Sometimes you have to eat 5, 6 times. You just had lunch, and then comes another person. Oh, please come to my house. Just a little bit of prasad, just little. And they get so upset if you say, oh, sorry, I'm full. They get honestly really upset. You have to sit down. You have to accept something. And then just when you leave from that place, another person comes, oh, you have to come to my house. Quickly, oh, please sit down. You have to have something. So like this, you just go from one place to the other, and you have to accept prasadam. So that's the mood. That's the Vaishnava hospitality. Very, very amazing. Okay, so let us move on to our last topic. We want to invite His Holiness Bhaktivedanta Puri Maharaj. He will put the cherry on the cake here for us tonight. And we would like to request him to speak about the mood and attitude of husband and wife. He is very expert in the subtle psychologies of husband and wife. So please, Maharaj, take your seat up here and enlighten us on that last topic of our programming.
So we've heard so many very nice Grihastha ashram, and so the concept as devotees, then all these religious elements, their perfection is the connection to Krishna consciousness. Because otherwise, even you have everything perfect, you follow all the rules, everything goes nicely, everything's really wonderful. The problem is it's temporary. It will end. And then next life, you can't say what it will be. So Prahlad Maharaj pointing this out, then he gives that aspect that religion is there. It's important because it's the proper medium to use for the expression of Krishna consciousness. But the difficulty is that it's not connected to Krishna. It takes on a temporary quality, and so therefore, for the soul, it's a waste of time. So with that in mind, then we have to understand is that all these very nice points that we've been hearing, how the husband and wife cooperate together, charity, the simple living, all these different aspects, their value is in how much it can help you be Krishna conscious. That's its actual purpose. In other words, we as conditioned living entities, then we find certain situations we're comfortable being Krishna conscious. If we're in a different situation, we're not so comfortable. So the idea of the whole system of religion is to find that position that we're comfortable in. And in that comfortable position, we can be Krishna conscious. Simply because we're not beyond the bodily platform. So we see like Haridas Thakur and others, Prahlad Maharaj, it didn't really matter the situation. They were very nicely Krishna conscious. But until we get to that platform, then religion is very useful. And so of the religious processes, then in this case we're discussing Varnashram, in which the Grihastha ashram is then the central feature. The Grihastha ashram is said to be the best of all the ashrams, because through the Grihastha ashram, all the other ashrams are supported. So that way the whole system goes on nicely. But the element, if the purpose is not Krishna consciousness, it's not actually real, it's not devotional. Karma without worship of the Lord actually doesn't work. So in the Vedic system, whatever you're doing within karma, it always has worship of the Lord. But if the karma itself is the prominent feature, and the worship of the Lord is just the servant of that, technically it's not devotional. Because devotion means pleasing Krishna. And so if we're only approaching Krishna so family life goes nicely, that won't be so pleasing to him. At least, yes, you've connected to him, or something like this. It's pious. You'll get credit for that. But Lord Chaitanya gave us how we can actually please the Lord. So that means then we have to see that these things are useful to serve Krishna, not that they themselves are the service. That's always important to note. That we're cooking for Krishna, for example. So that devotion of doing that, that's the bhakti. But the particular recipe, the pots, the pans, the techniques we use, these are material techniques. But using them for Krishna, then they get used, they get absorbed in Krishna. They get Krishnized. But just the expertise in which we do something, the techniques that we use, the knowledge we have, if it doesn't culminate in pleasing Krishna, then it doesn't actually have any meaning. But so many people are using great knowledge, great techniques, so many things, but it's not being done to please Krishna. So what makes the devotees different? They do it to please Krishna. That's what makes the difference. So it always has to be remembered that all these techniques are important, and as all the different devotees were saying, each topic that they're talking, they could talk for days on each one. So yes, you could go on and on and on about this. And it's important. But if we're talking about the secret, or let's say in this case, the secret of all secrets, as Krishna says in Gita, is that you have following Krishna's laws, that's the secret. But following those laws to please him, that's the secret of the secret. That's the most important. So that will be done. Devotional service means you're performing an activity. So what activity you'll perform, that's given by the scriptures. And so in this case, we're discussing the Grihastha ashram. And it has the widest range of activities and facilities you can engage in Krishna's service. But it's the doing that to please Krishna that makes it devotion, not doing it to please ourselves. We will be pleased in the process. You cook nicely for Krishna, the prasad will be nice. You don't cook nicely for Krishna, the prasad won't be nice. So we don't have to separately try to make nice prasad and then separately try to please Krishna. No, it's done all together. You don't have to separately do this. Right? Trying to please Krishna and then trying to please yourself, you don't have to do. So in this, then, if we look at it carefully, then we're using these mediums. So this techniques that is there between the husband and wife, then their value is in how much it can enhance the interaction so that one is comfortable in Krishna consciousness. And Prabhupada defines comfortable as not being uncomfortable. So that's very, very individual. Right? The examples that are given are always extreme so that no one can claim the example doesn't apply to me. Right? Oh, I don't have anything, so how can I do this? So the example is given as someone who has way less than we have, so that it can be done. Right? So Krishna gives the mediums by which he is pleased, because if it's about pleasing him, that means Grihastha ashram has to be run accordingly that he will be pleased. And so he applies himself, like when he's in Dwarka with the queens, how he interacts, that's what pleases him. And so if we do that, not to please Krishna, yes, Grihastha life will go very wonderfully. At least as wonderfully can go. We have to understand we're dealing a bit here with euphemisms. But if we do that to please Krishna, the reason we're following that is because it pleases Krishna. That's going to be the main point. If that's not caught, do all the technique you want, but then at some point you get old, you die, and then what? You don't know where you're going to go, what you're going to do. You're pious, okay, you go to the heavenly planets, or get a nice birth. Not so pious, who knows where you're going to end up. So it has no guarantee. It's only when it's a connection to Krishna. Pancharatra Prabhu was saying, basis in Bhagavatam and chanting, that one's humble, one's tolerant, one respects others, doesn't look for your respect for yourself. The result is you can always chant. That's the point. That's what makes us happy. So that point of us not being uncomfortable means our situation we're in, we don't have to think about it. Right? If it's less than what we're comfortable with, we'll always be thinking about it. It'll agitate us. But if it's more than what we require, it will also distract. Because once you get more, then you want more than that. There's no end to that. Right? We're definitely not going to take it less and less, and there's no end to that. We're going to be careful about that end. But it's how much is that much I'm comfortable with. That's how much you require. That's what it, and that adjusts. Sometimes you need something more in one area, sometimes in another. Through life it goes, you find the balance. But one has to appreciate that the actual medium to use is what will be pleasing to Krishna. And Krishna himself has his lifestyle. That lifestyle is documented in Scripture. As we see the 20th quality of Krishna is he follows the Vedic law. What's given in Scripture, he follows that. So since it's about his pastimes and him being pleased, right? It's him and his Icha Shakti. All the other energies are simply trying to please Krishna. That means what he does is what pleases him. And he follows Scripture, so that means what Scripture says, that's what pleases him. So then, by seeing the example given by the Acharyas, how they explain it, then we take that and try to practically apply it in our life. That's the important approach. Then we can see is that all these different details, what it says about how the husband behaves, the wife behaves, these aspects themselves then start to have some meaning. If it's about us, then yes, I mean, I may like this, I may not like this. But if it's about pleasing Krishna, then it's something you do. Just like, let's say you want to have a program for somebody, say some party or invite them over. So then you're going to try to please them. You know they like to eat like this or do like this, those things you do. Now, if I invite someone over and I've made all the arrangements how I like, and it doesn't matter whether they like it or not, no one will say that's a good host. So in the same way as if it's just about us, well, this is what I like to do. And Krishna's got to accept that. And then, yes, he will. He's sitting in the heart. We're worms in stool. He's still sitting on our heart. But we have to remember is that that's not bhakti. That's worshiping the Lord. It has that religious element, but it's about ourselves. It's about our things. It's about karma. Or it's about, getting freed from distinguishing between matter and spirit. That's jnana. But until we distinguish that it means Krishna and service to Krishna, then karma and jnana actually won't satisfy us. Because it won't satisfy Krishna. Because he is all the karma. He is all the karma. Everything that you do, the potency behind it is Krishna. In other words, the husband dealing with the wife, that potency of husbandness is Krishna. It's not us. You can think, oh yeah, I learned some techniques, now I'm doing... No, it's not happening. It's Krishna's potency that makes it happen. We appreciate it, we have faith in it, Krishna then reveals how it works, we're able to use it. But still, unless we use it for Krishna, that I'm doing this because Krishna says I should do like this. Same way with the wife. Then what are the different aspects in that? We'll say, oh, I don't want to do this, I don't want to do that, that's not me, and all these things. But who is this me that we're saying we're not? Because in one sense, we're not the body. On the other sense, hey, I'm a Westerner. I can't do this. So we should make up our mind. Are we the soul or are we a Westerner? Because the Westerner is the body. That's the grossness of the body. That's not the soul. So just as a basic, spiritual life 101, that the gross body made out of the 5 elements and the subtle body made out of mind, intelligence, false ego, and polluted consciousness, those aren't the soul. Those are of the 24 elements. Those are classified as material, and that's accepted by all the great saints and sages. So we have to make up our mind. So yes, we find the situation that we're comfortable in, but it's not that that is the prominent feature. If we make that the prominent feature, then where's the devotion? Krishna has to be the prominent feature. Yes, okay, I prefer living like this, eating like this, but do it. But why do we have to talk about it? We're supposed to be talking about Krishna. That's just something you do. You cook lunch. Do we have to tell the world we're cooking lunch like this because I have a philosophy? No, you're cooking lunch because you're hungry and this is what you like to eat. You know, so we have to kind of get over ourselves and move on to the position of that we're servants of Krishna. Move beyond all these gross identifications, at the same time trying to say, oh, but we're not the body, and then trying to make it look like it's spiritual when it's still purely material. Because remember, spiritual in this case means we're just distinguishing between matter and spirit, but we haven't distinguished what is Krishna and his taste and devotion to that person. The impersonalists do this. They say we're not the body. Are they devotees? No. So we have to understand is that karma and jnana are not devotional unless they connected to Krishna. And connecting to Krishna means how Krishna says it's connected to him, not how we say it is. We can say whatever we want. It absolutely doesn't matter. It's what Krishna says, what the acharyas say. We follow that. That's how then we find the duties and then apply it. And if that's it, then you have a common basis for the husband and wife. It's Krishna. Then all these activities that are done are just to please Krishna. And because husband and wife are working together, then they're good companions because they can support each other. Right? Because if you have no desires, yes, being alone will work. Right? But if you have material desires and needs, that's just there from our conditioning, then having someone to be there and help is very useful. But we have to understand is that very usefulness is only useful in connection with Krishna. Otherwise, it's just another birth of unlimited births that we've been here already. So if that's very clear, then the details of how husband and wife will work together, that then has meaning. Then they start to make sense, because if I'm the soul and I'm servant, then I look at it from that point. But if I'm the body and I'm the subtle body, then of course so many of these rules don't apply, because I can't guarantee that of the 400,000 species that I happen to take birth in, that that I'm from one of the ones that's civilized, right? Because tribals have their own method. And tribal doesn't necessarily mean you have to have a bone in your nose. Tribal just means you don't care about the Vedic. That's the definition of tribal.
Wife, 7 days before he married her. Yes, 7 days before they had the yagya.
It wasn't in Las Vegas, just for information.
In Las Vegas, wow.
It wasn't.
Oh, it wasn't. I was just thinking, wow, how does that fit in? It wasn't in Las Vegas. It was not just coincidentally meeting and falling in love or something. So, but no, it was actually perfectly how one enters married life in spiritual culture, which is very, very different than in mundane ways of entering married life. So different. Many of us, when we hear, after 7 days of meeting a person, how can I make that commitment? How can I marry somebody? Impossible. We think we have to associate for 1 year or 2 years or something, and only then we can decide. But that's in materialistic culture the way how we enter. So now I want to give the word to Subhakshan Prabhu so he can enlighten us and share some things about how he entered married life. Thank you.
Hare Krishna. Thank you very much, Mataji. So Mataji sent me a little email with a couple of points she wanted me to touch upon. So, firstly, entering Grihastha Ashram. From what we understand from Srila Prabhupada's teachings, we do not enter any ashram, but also includes Grihastha Ashram, independently. As with all ashrams, we enter an ashram under the guidance of the scriptures, of authorities, of family, of gurus and other such great personalities. So it's not so much of an entering Grihastha Ashram, but to being led, or when we follow a path, a certain path in life, and as life takes us, then under the guidance of those previously mentioned personalities, then we are guided, and with their blessings and guidance, then we enter Grihastha ashram. And I think that's something very, very important in spiritual culture, as Mataji calls it. We don't make decisions independently. That's one of the fundamental differences between spiritual or theistic culture and materialistic or atheistic culture. That spiritual culture is a culture of dependence, depending on the scripture, depending on the Lord, depending on the Vaishnavas. So entering Grihastha ashram maintains that principle that we do depend on Guru, Hari and Bhagavad Gita to enter this ashram and to make it successful. So in Grihastha ashram, and as in all other ashrams, obviously we look for happiness because the nature of the soul is Satchit Ananda. So happiness or Ananda, there are different ways of realizing happiness, but as we know from Nectar of Devotion, actual happiness means relationship. So I remember when I was a kid, I heard once this poem and somehow it stuck with me, that there was the poem about one boy in Polish, but this boy, when he was small, he was always running around and playing with the bow and arrows. But then when he became a teenager, then he wasn't interested in bow and arrows. He used to think about girls all the time. So that's the basic idea. So happiness means that we try to interact with something, have a relationship with something. So generally speaking, when we are small, then there's those different things, bows and arrows and other toys. And for girls, maybe dolls and houses. And then as we grow up, then those things do not give us enough happiness or satisfaction, and we decide to enter a relationship with somebody other than things. So material happiness means relationship ultimately. People have so many different things, beautiful things, expensive things, but unless there is a relationship, there is no complete happiness. We need somebody to share happiness with. We cannot be happy on our own. Without having a relationship with a person, it is very difficult to experience happiness. So material happiness is often glorified in poetry and in movies, and even in Vedas, Traigunya Vishayaveda. And obviously there's lots of happiness in heavenly planets, and happiness where men and women they come together and enjoy. But these forms of happiness, they're not spiritual. They're just different manifestations of lust. They may be subtle on the higher planets, and depending on the level of the consciousness of a person entering a relationship, then there may be more gross manifestations of lust. So in the material world, the relationship between men and women is not considered to be very pure or very auspicious. It's a manifestation of that all-pervading desire for sense gratification. It's a manifestation of lust. And as far as relationships are concerned, Srila Prabhupada talks about the relationship between mother and the child as being the purest form of a relationship, because it is based on the service. It is not based on what do I get out of it, but it is a sacrifice a mother makes for the benefit of the child. So therefore, Srila Prabhupada says this is the closest thing one can see in this world as far as love is concerned. So sometimes as a devotees we have a little bit different understanding or naive understanding. Hare Krishna Maharaj, I remember once he was giving class here some years back, and he was giving this example how devotees think that they will get married and they will be sitting together and drinking hot milk and reading Bhagavatam together. And that was kind of, and the sun will be setting, and that was the kind of a pinnacle of a Grihastha ashram, which is a very nice idea. But obviously it takes a lot more than that. Firstly, somebody has to buy the milk. Somebody has to cook it. You have to. It's a lot more complicated than that. purpose of marriage in a spiritual culture is somewhat not always fully understood. As Mataji mentioned, we come from different cultures, so often we superimpose our conditioning understanding of what married life is all about into Vaishnava marriage. So sort of the ideas we get from romantic novels and movies and what we see around in this world, and we impose it on Vaishnava relationships. So not necessarily externals may be the same, but the mood very, very different. So in a Vedic culture, the idea is that the Grihastha ashram comes second, is the second ashram. It comes after the Brahmachari ashram. The scriptures declare that a Brahmachari becomes an Acharya, or he becomes Prajapati. So Acharya means somebody who does not enter the Grihastha ashram, but he preaches the Vedic knowledge. And Grihastha means somebody who applies this knowledge practically for the pleasure of the Lord as a part of his service for the Lord. So that's a basic difference. It is called Grihastha ashram. The purpose of Grihastha ashram in Vedic culture is to live a life of sacrifice, a different type of sacrifice. Brahmachari performs sacrifice for the pleasure of his guru by controlling his senses, and Grihastha engages his senses in the service of the Lord and his spiritual master. So in materialistic culture, then a slightly different approach. As a spiritual culture means at least one comes to the level of manamoya, or a religious level. Grihastha ashram means coming to a religious platform, a platform of duty. As a brahmachari, one is trained to act in the mood of naishkamya. Naishkamya means acting without a selfish personal desire. A very, very important aspect of training of brahmachari is to bring them to the platform of duty, that they don't do things simply to receive some prize or some recognition or any of those things, but because the injunction of the scripture and the guru, therefore they engage in those activities, and that is known as naishkamya. So the same mood of naishkamya has to be carried into a grihastha ashram. Therefore, like we said about the love of a mother, there's a duty, a certain loving duty is there, and she performs that loving duty. So a grihastha ashram means a certain aspect of duty is there, the duty to put aside a personal sense gratification or personal desire for the purpose of performing a certain prescribed and religious duties. However, in a materialistic culture, then it's not there. The lower levels of consciousness are involved. Relationship is a relationship, but the consciousness of people who are involved in the relationship is very different. A materialistic culture means the platform of anamaya, or sense gratification. So when people come to a certain age, then sexual urges come about, and then they strive to gratify their senses. And then for that they need a partner, so it becomes a relationship. Or sometimes when people are more developed and come from more sophisticated backgrounds, then they act on the platform of pranamoya, or extended sense gratification, where certain values and certain resources and economic and social criteria are also considered. So besides the sense gratification which is involved in a relationship between men and women, then you consider all other social considerations. So people often go and register the marriage, and it becomes a legally and morally binding obligation. So there's a big difference there. Annamaya and pranamaya platform means that we did things for ourselves. Religious or spiritual platforming, we do things as a sacrifice for the Lord and for the purpose of self-realization. This is not so in the case of materialistic marriage or materialistic relationships. So, although we often say that since as a devotees we enter a relationship for spiritual purposes and material considerations are not important for us, generally speaking, a short time after we enter the marriage, we see that those material considerations we consider to be unimportant and basically unimportant. They become quite important and quite a big stumbling blocks in the relationships. So even though one enters Grihastha ashram for the sake of helping each other in self-realization, certain compatibility issues have to be there. And certain compatible issues have to be considered because one, generally speaking, can't maintain 100% Krishna consciousness all the time, and there will be times when one will be more Krishna conscious, and there will be times when one will be less Krishna conscious. And generally speaking, at the early stages of spiritual life, then there is lots of time where we are not so Krishna conscious, and sometimes we are Krishna conscious when we are in good association and properly engaged in devotional service. So therefore this consideration becomes quite essential to find a person that one is properly, has a proper compatibility with, so that there is no tension in the family, so that one can be peaceful, one can be properly situated as a grihastha, and that minimum energy and time is spent to deal with distraction, and that time and energy can be given to focus on spiritual development. So one of the other considerations which Mataji requested to speak about is the length of the period of association before one gets married. Of course, I'm not a lawmaker in ISKCON, so I don't really have an opinion of how long this period should take. There will be so many different opinions and considerations. But I can speak that traditionally, generally speaking, 7 days is also quite long. Generally speaking, one just gets married and is married. That's how it is. I don't know necessarily because I haven't really had the experience, and I practically can speak from practice, but from understanding and from observation that generally speaking one needs to be committed to whatever one does in life. And if one manages somehow to become committed to making spiritual progress, and one manages to become committed to Krishna consciousness before entering Grihastha ashram, then entering Grihastha ashram is just a different form of showing one's commitment to Krishna consciousness. So in Brahmacharya ashram, we study, we serve our guru, we engage in different services under the guidance of spiritual master. And in Grihastha ashram, then we take what we have learned from our gurus and apply it in a family environment. So really there's not so much change internally, and the mood is very much the same. There's some adjustment in the cultural adjustments. Brahmacharya ashram is very simple. It's more austere and masculine type of environment, while Grihastha ashram, then women are there. So with that, so many other elements and complexities come to the ashram. So generally speaking, it is not really required to associate for a very, very long time. My personal belief is that people should get married young, but it should be quickly. It should be properly arranged under the proper guidance of experienced Vaishnavas, family members. And above all, they should have a proper understanding of what the Grihastha ashram is. If that understanding and that guidance, community support is there, then it can be very, very successful with minimum distraction and minimum troubles. But if that community support is not there, then no amount of association before the marriage, if the understanding and support is there, will not fix the problem. The real problem is that people often don't understand the implications of Grihastha ashram, and there is not enough support, community support, for them to maintain that relationship. So if those two elements are there, then 1 minute or 1 year, it doesn't really matter. Anyway, but from scriptural perspective, then there's no such a thing as bachelor. There's the concept of snataka. There's no concept try before you buy, as we have in the West. Snataka means that somebody has decided to get married, and sometimes before he enters Grihastha ashram, then he goes and studies and learns things he didn't manage to study and learn in the particular ashram or particular school he was in. He wants to learn some specialized knowledge which was not available in the particular place where he studied, or he wants to engage in some services he perhaps did not have opportunity to engage in the ashram he was before. So that time is given to do that, and there's no specified time also, because as long it depends what it is, what he tries to study, they may take a different time, but it is not a time where he would associate freely with the opposite sex. There's no such an injunction or such a possibility really. Vedic culture, it does not matter if you are brahmachari, grihastha, vanaprastha, or sannyasi. Is the culture of celibacy and sense control. So free mixing is never allowed. Mixing between men and women without marriage is considered to be sinful. So generally speaking, we would not take that risk of committing a sin and coming closely to a person without marriage, knowing that the nature of men and women is such that without proper supervision and without proper allowances, it may end up in sin. So generally speaking, that wouldn't be something we will try to do. We will in fact try to avoid. It's a dangerous place to be, both for a man and for a woman. So advantages and disadvantages. Advantages that if you get married when you're young and you don't associate so much, then you grow up together. It's always a good thing. People you grow up with, they will be your friends forever. There's no doubt about it. We maybe get older as some of our senior Vaishnavas here, but we still remember our childhood, our youth friends. So growing up together is a wonderful thing. One also is protected because in youth, that's where the senses and desires are the strongest. So entering the Grihastha ashram in a suitable age, as Srila Prabhupada talks about, is indeed very helpful. Disadvantages of associating and doing all those other things, then I think everybody knows more or less here that we get our hearts broken, we get attached, we do things we regret later on. So I don't think we need to talk much about that. The important thing to remember about the spiritual culture of marriage is that Vedic culture is a culture of commitment. So just as one becomes committed to one's spiritual practice, as one views marriage as a spiritual practice, then one can have a true commitment only. It's not possible to be committed to anything in the material world. It does not exist. Commitment in the material world does not really exist as such, because a spirit soul can only be committed to spirit. When we commit ourselves to something material, we become naturally, very quickly, disinterested with it. But the spirit and the soul always has taste for spiritual activities. So the idea of Grihastha ashram is to spiritualize the relationship, to bring Krishna into the relationship, to bring that mood of sacrifice and service into the relationship. And by doing that, then one becomes stable and steady in that relationship. That's the importance to make a family as a religious institution, not just some moral institution or legal institution, but a religious institution. In the material world, in the relationships, we all look for stability, but neither economics nor sense gratification is able to provide any sort of stability, but religion is. There was religion yesterday, religion exists today, and religion will exist tomorrow. So bringing marriage to religious platform automatically gives you that feeling of stability and assurance that this thing will last, this thing will work, that you are not on your own. It's not just you and your wife or husband, but there is a higher power supporting that relationship. And that is a great strength for a Grihastha devotees to have that spiritual dimension to the relationship. Vivaha samskar is a samskar which in itself is meant for the purification of the bride. And just like the man is supposed to complete his brahmachari training and enter Grihastha ashram for the performance of sacrifice and self-realization as a continuation of the brahmachari ashram, for women Vivaha samskar is like the Upanayanam samskar or the Brahminical initiation. Then together with the husband they can engage in worship of the Lord. So this samskar should be celebrated very properly. It should be beautiful, it should be colorful, we should spend as much money as we can, and we should try to please as many people as we can. It shouldn't be kept small. We should try to make it very, very festive and make it very, very, very wonderful, and try to serve as many devotees as possible so that we receive the blessings and that we can be successful in Grihastha ashram. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Guru. That was very wonderful. Actually, it's a good point that weddings in Krishna consciousness, they should be so big, so gorgeous, so huge, that you just cannot pretend that it never happened. You just cannot cancel it. Yes. That's the idea, that there's so many elders there giving blessings, giving gifts. You cannot just, make it, cancel it. Or you cannot do it another time. It is something you only do once in your life. That's the whole idea. And I guess one important point really in entering married life in Krishna consciousness is really this firm commitment. And that requires faith in Krishna, actually, that we see our spouse as Krishna's gift. This is what Krishna has given me for my purification, and I have to accept that gift. I cannot return it to Krishna or something. No, this is what he has given me, and we have to stick with it through all ups and downs and whatever might be coming. So that commitment has to be there, whereas a non-devotee, he has that mood, well, while it's nice, while it's pleasing to me, I'm happy, and as soon as it's not so pleasing anymore, then I just flee the scene, I cancel, I get divorced. So it's a very, very different attitude, very different mindset. Even as non-devotee, people like to get a guarantee for sense gratification before they're willing to sign the contract. They want to try out how nice will it be. That's why we want this long period of association to try out. As Subhakshana Prabhu said, try before you buy. But spiritual culture, very different mood, very different. Because the sense gratification is not the goal in life. So there's no talk about, how much fun it will really be. No, it's not a criterion. So obviously, we actually need preparation. This is one thing which I'm often lamenting about, that we have not really gotten there yet, that we prepare, we educate, we train our devotees how to enter married life, how to go through married life. For most of us, there's no training. We simply get married and that's it, and there's no preparation. And I mean, it's also not surprising because our ISKCON movement is only 50 years old. So, but it has to come. It has to come. Otherwise, how will we really establish a society with healthy and strong families? Right? So now let us move on to some secrets of success in the Grihastha ashram. Actually, there are aspects which really make our family life into an ashram. There's a few aspects there. Without these aspects, it's not so much an ashram, but as much as the aspects are present there in our life, proportionally our family life is actually an ashram for self-realization. And I would like to invite now His Grace Pancharatna Prabhu to enlighten us on the first secret of success. For those who don't know Pancharatna Prabhu, he is a disciple of Srila Prabhupada. He actually joined in 1970 in Toronto. He was brahmachari for 10 years, and then he entered Grihastha life, and he's been doing so many wonderful services. He brought up 4 children with his good wife, Atita Gunamadaji, and since 1976 they're actually based in Mayapur, and sometimes they're spending some time in America. But their base is Mayapur, and they have performed so much wonderful service. Pancharatna Prabhu was even involved in building the Long Building, if I'm correct, and Grihastha apartments. So he likes to start projects and then hand them over and let other devotees continue them. And his good wife, she's been active in the international school, and she's got the kids park there in the Grihastha park, the kids playground, and she's active there and is guiding a lot of devotees in their family life and. So we would like to invite His Grace Pancharatna Prabhu to share with us how Srimad Bhagavatam and the Holy Name, how these two aspects, Shravanam Kirtanam, they're actually the foundation. They should be the foundation to our family life if we want to make it an ashram. Please, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Today we were talking a little bit in lunchtime with friends about Dharma, and we were thinking, and with, I don't know if you'll agree with me, that our real law book, our Dharmic law book, is Srimad Bhagavatam. Some of us may be able to make heads or tails out of the Mano Samhita. I can't. I honestly just don't understand it. So I'm not going to even try to go there. But the Srimad Bhagavatam contains a roadmap for us. It contains not just a spiritual guide, but also a guide to how to live our lives in any ashram, and especially in the Grihastha ashram. In fact, most of the people in the Srimad Bhagavatam are Grihasthas. Of course, they often happen to be on heavenly planets and have mystic powers where they can make castles in the sky. But we may not be able to, when their wives are needing some vacation. We would like to have that, wouldn't we? That would be nice. Yeah, we need vacation. Well, all right, here's a castle in the sky. We'll go anywhere we want. No, we have to do it a little differently. But there's so much to be learned from the Srimad Bhagavatam in terms of how to live in the Grihastha ashram. And the first direction we get from the Srimad Bhagavatam is that any of our duties, any of our activities, they are meant for the pleasure of Krishna. So whatever we do, of course this is not only Bhagavatam, Gita also tells us in this way, We're doing it for the pleasure of Krishna. So this was already mentioned by Subhakshana Prabhu, that when we are looking to enter into the Grihastha ashram, we're entering in with this view, this goal to please Krishna. And as we are in this ashram, that's our central focus. And the holy name is the companion. When I was asked to talk about the holy name in the Bhagavatam in relationship to our Grihastha ashram, I came round to the foundation of our relationship with Srinam, which is the verse Mahaprabhu gives us in the Shikshashtakam.
You can live in a city, be very sophisticated, and still be a tribal. It's even a Western joke, you know. How you say, this concrete jungle, right? This is full of animals. So you have to understand is even the materialist understands it's pretty, you know, I mean, they have dog eat dog, right? You know, that's how life goes, economics goes, politics goes, social systems go. So we have to be very, very specific to be able to define that. I'm doing this because Shastra says we have to have that faith in Shastra. Because without faith, it's not devotion. Smartas, all the things that we do that we even find difficult to do, they do. That's their normal thing. Their daily, our schedule that we follow in the day, getting up in the morning, all the things we do exactly, that's what they do. That's their normal lifestyle. But because it's not about Krishna, it's not devotion. So we have to be very, very careful is that we see that the only reason to do something, only reason to decide on something is how much it will please Krishna, or how much at least it's bringing us to a position where we can try to please Krishna. So we're living like this, we're comfortable, so now we can chant, now we can read, we can associate with devotees, we can worship the deities. That's how then we should see it. And if it's not adding to that, then what's the point? Then it's superfluous. So we have to be able to find how we're able to adjust our situation to make it as streamlined as possible. And that streamline can be from the level of Sudama Brahman up to Yudhishthira Maharaj. So wherever you fit in between. But the point is it's geared to that much is how much is required. Now I am comfortable. Now it's Krishna consciousness. Not comfortable with security or this. Or, no, that you can't. Greed you can't satisfy. So don't work on those ones. Comfortable means if I have this much, it's okay. Right? I don't think about it. That's your point. Does that make sense? Because if you're thinking about more, that's too much. Does this make sense? So then you're able to balance and make Krishna the center. Because if you don't start with the mentality, then all these different technical rules and regulations, which are very valuable and useful, because they're tradition, they're given by the acharyas, they work very nicely, Krishna follows them himself, and we'd have to say his grihastha life went quite well. Right? So it works. But at the same time still, that's not good enough unless it's about pleasing Krishna. If it's just, no, we want this very nice, wonderful, family and community and feel really good and secure, and that's where we end the discussion, because in the whole discussion we never bring up Krishna, then what's the point? The point is to please Krishna. So pleasing Krishna means following these things automatically give the result, right? In other words, I'm performing an activity to get a result. That result's offered to Krishna. So, being that I'm doing it to please Krishna, that's the devotion. But in the process of doing that to please Krishna, the result I've gained. So I have the facility that comes from that. So the material facilities come automatically when you try to serve Krishna, if you understand the system. Generally we take it, devotional service means chanting our japa and that in the temple, and then our household life, I'm just being practical. No, but if you don't see how the energies of whatever you're doing, your house, your facility, all comes from Krishna, The Vedanta Sutra makes very specific point of this, because the other philosophies that are not devotional, they're trying to say, no, the material energy is the cause of all the facility. God's something else. God may have, created that, but he's not the one that's making it happen. Right? He's not the potency behind why material energy does what it does. So then, in that case, then it's between me and material energy. God's not part of it. So we have to be very, very careful when we get into the grihastha and community and all these things, that we don't think that all these rules, all these nice techniques, we don't see them that it's just, if I do that, that makes everything work. No, because the potency to make anything work, earth acts as earth, water as water, fire is fire, because it's Krishna. He's doing that. So if that's remembered, then you remember the different techniques and rules. That's because it's Krishna. So if the husband's dealing with the wife, the potency of wife is Krishna. And so is it devotional service to deal with Krishna how he doesn't want to be dealt with? And the same, the husbandness of the husband. Right? That's what the Upanishad says. Krishna is the husband of the husband. He's the husbandness of the husband, the wifeness of the wife, the childrenness of the children. He's the moneyness of the money. Right? That's what's then Krishna. If you don't see that, you can't connect everything to Krishna. Right? Because if that's there, how can you deal between husband and wife badly if who you're actually dealing with is Krishna and his potency? So if it's about pleasing Krishna, you have to, it's your service to do it nicely, but it has to be because it pleases Krishna, not because if I do it nicely, then I'll get all the benefit. You'll get the benefit anyway. Right? But you have to focus on the part that's about Krishna. And that's how these great personalities in Bhagavatam, especially we see starting from the 6th canto, it's talking all these Paramahamsas. They're Paramahamsas, literally, it says there. But they're all grihastas, they're kings, they're emperors. They do all the things nicely. It even mentions how they interact with their wives, how they joke, how they laugh. Krishna with Rukmini. That's just part of the process. That's how the process works. But it's not, these are techniques, I'll get something from it. This is techniques how you use it to please Krishna. It has to ultimately be to please Krishna. Otherwise, it's not devotional service. We have to remember, good qualities. There's something you can use in Krishna's service or materially. It's like potatoes. You can use them to make something for Krishna or cook something for yourself. Potatoes aren't spiritual. So good qualities are not spiritual. I'll repeat that. Good qualities are not spiritual. It's only when they're engaged in Krishna's service they become spiritual. Nowadays, if we're good, we're nice, we're this, we're that, all these nice things, then we're great devotees. No, you're not. You're just a nice guy. Devotees, then, a nice guy that's devoted to Krishna. It's not that devotion, that niceness makes devotional service great. We have to understand that. It's devotional service makes all the qualities, all the endeavor, all the facilities, all the relationships that makes that worthwhile. We have to see which direction we're looking. You get the direction wrong, you get distracted. Then we think material will make devotional service better. I have money, then devotional service will be great. If management is good, then devotional service will be great. No. If you're devoted, then devotional service will be great. And then you can add whatever qualities you have into it. That's what's there. It's not the ingredients you put into the cooking. It's whether you know how to cook. Right? And for us, that cooking means you're doing that to please Krishna. So doing it to please Krishna, you can have some potatoes, some salt, some pepper, and you're good. Now, if you want to add other things in, great. But if you say, just putting those things in there, that's what makes a good preparation, no cook will agree. So in the same way as I have material qualities, I'm good at them, I'm expert, I have knowledge. No acharya, no devotee, no one from the other side of Viraja will agree with you. You'll find plenty of people this side will agree with you, Not one person on that side will agree. That's very, very clear. It's only because it's done to please Krishna, that makes it devotional service. And so the two have to go together. You do something in a wrong mood, no one likes it. You do it in the proper mood, everyone likes it. So the mood is actually more important than the knowledge and skill. Have the right mood to please Krishna, please the Vaishnavas, then everyone will be happy. And if you don't, then it'll take a little longer. Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you very much, Maharaj. So let us gradually wind up our little program here. Let us conclude that actually to make our family life an ashram not such an easy thing. It doesn't happen automatically. We have to make some endeavors, we have to transform our attitudes and visions and expectations. We have to accept some training, some education, we have to prepare ourselves. We need some guidance from devotees who are more experienced in mastering this ashram. So not such an easy thing. And I'd like to conclude by reading one of my favorite letters by Srila Prabhupada, where he emphasizes this need for training, for getting on deeper levels of understanding and spiritual practice. This is the famous letter 1972, which Prabhupada wrote to Hamsadutta. Now we have got so many students and so many temples, but I'm fearful that if we expand too much in this way, that we shall become weakened and gradually the whole thing will become lost. Just like milk, we may thin it more and more with water for cheating the customers, but in the end it will cease to be any longer milk. Better to boil the milk now very vigorously and make it thick and sweet. That is the best process. So let us concentrate on training our devotees very thoroughly in the knowledge of Krishna consciousness from our books, from tapes, by discussing always, and in so many ways instruct them in the right propositions. Very nice instruction, which we maybe can conclude on, that yes, by further training, by programs like this, by attending all kinds of different courses, we boil the milk, we get on deeper levels of understanding, of instruction, and that will gradually transform our consciousness, our attitudes, our tastes, our likes and dislikes. And we actually will be able to make the day of the materialist, we transform that into the day of the spiritualist. And the day of the materialist will become our very night. Okay, so let us conclude on that note. Thank you all very much for coming. Also, one last little thing, I have made one humble attempt to put a little book together. Spiritual Culture, Krishna's Divine System. It gives insights into many relevant topics in connection with culture, in connection with Krishna's system. Spiritual culture being Krishna's system, which he has given us in order to give us stability and harmony in this world. And at the same time, we will recognize that all our social problems we are facing, like divorce, single motherhood, neglected children, violence towards women, and the list is long, all these things are actually global reactions for not following Krishna's system. These things don't have actually room in Krishna's system. And our disease in these modern days is that we think our modern systems are better than Krishna's system. We think Krishna's system is old-fashioned, outdated, no need. And as a global reaction, we get all these social problems. So I'm always envisioning that Lord Chaitanya's Sankirtan movement shows how civilized, cultured human beings are meant to live within Krishna's system. How we can show the world how we are meant to live as human beings. Then actually our preaching will become very powerful. That will be convincing. But as long as we are facing the same problems as the outside world, then what do we have to show to the world? Not very much. Then our Krishna consciousness is simply a nice philosophy. But unless we are actually really living it and showing how we human beings are meant to live in harmony and stability so that we can concentrate on developing our relationship with Krishna, that will make our preaching successful. It will make it convincing. Because there's so many people out there, they're sick and tired of all these modern rat race. People are looking for alternatives. They're looking for different culture, for a different lifestyle. So we have access to Krishna's system. So we have to demonstrate how we are meant to live. So this little book gives some little insights in all kinds of relevant topics. So if you would like to take one, 250 rupees, we have a book table out there, so please have a look at it. It also will create a very good foundation to this point of making our family life an actual ashram. We will find all different useful insights. So, and last but not least, please don't leave without taking some little bit of prasadam there. We have two tables. There's the table for the ladies and there for the men. So please queue up. Oh, what's that? Oh, okay. Yes, we have put our tables here for our special guests and sadhus who were kindly enlightening us. So if you have the time to stay and maybe Prabhupada's disciples and senior devotees, then please take your seat there and we will quickly serve you just a little snack, just something little. Okay, thank you so much for coming and attending this program. Thank you all. Srila Prabhupada ki, Sarva Bhaktivinoda ki, Gaura Premanande.